Hey there. So you guys want to know more about The Idea of You, the movie that everyone's been talking about and what its stars are up to now that it's been out for a bit. Well, good news. We got all the intel. Stuff from Prime Video, Wikipedia, IMDb. Oh, and even some news straight from Australia. Get ready. This is going to be good.
What's really interesting is that The Idea of You is based on a novel by Robin Lee, and it kind of seems like it's tapping into the same thing that's made Harry Styles so huge lately.
Great. Really?
Yeah.
Like older woman, younger guy, all that pop star stuff.
Exactly. So the movie follows this 40-year-old art gallery owner. Her name's Celine Marchand, and she falls for this 24-year-old pop star, Hayes Campbell. And get this, they meet at Coachella, where Celine's like chaperoning her daughter.
Oh, wow. That's definitely a recipe for some drama.
Yeah.
But is it like a typical rom-com or is there more to it?
Actually, it premiered at South by Southwest, SXSW, that super cool festival, and critics actually liked it. Yeah, one critic even said that the movie is better than a lot of rom-coms that have come out recently. They even compared it to, like, some of the classics.
So it's not just a fluffy romance, huh?
Yeah.
Color me intrigued.
Yeah, the reviews talk about how it explores themes of self-discovery and kind of, like, challenges the norms around age and romance. They say it's not just about the steamy romance, but it's also about Celine's personal journey. So what do you think? You think you might want to watch it?
I got to admit, you've definitely piqued my curiosity, and I'm already picturing Anne Hathaway just rocking that art gallery owner look. Speaking of Anne, what's she got going on after The Idea of You?
Well, she's still doing book adaptations, but she's making a big change, going from romance to, well, a thriller. She's going to be the lead in Verity, Colleen Hoover's book.
Wait, Colleen Hoover, as in the author whose books are like everywhere. I've heard of Verity. Yeah, that's totally different, right?
Yeah.
A psychological thriller.
You got it. It's about a writer who finds all these dark secrets. While she's ghostwriting for this injured author, Colleen Hoover, she's a best-selling author, but some of her books have caused a little bit of debate, you could say.
That's right. I remember hearing about that. And hasn't there been some controversy about like adapting her books to movies? Like some haven't really worked out that well.
Exactly. So some fans are a little worried about how Verity is going to turn out as a movie. So what do you think? Think Hathaway can pull it off?
Well, it's definitely a risky move for her, going from all that steamy romance to a dark thriller. I'm definitely curious to see how she handles it. Now, what about Nicholas Galitzine, the pop star from The Idea of You? Anything interesting happening with him?
He's going back to his royal roots. Remember Red, White, and Royal Blue? That LGBTQ plus rom-com that everyone loved last year? Well, he's going to be Prince Henry again in the sequel.
Oh, I loved that movie. They had amazing chemistry. Any hints about what the sequel's about?
They're keeping everything pretty secret right now. All we know is that both Galitzine and Taylor Zakhar Perez, who played the president's son, are coming back. So we'll have to wait and see what they get up to this time.
Okay, so Hathaway's going into thriller territory and Galitzine's back for another royal adventure. But going back to The Idea of You for a sec,
Yeah.
did any of the sources talk about their chemistry on screen? I mean, the age gap is a pretty big part of the story, right?
A lot of the reviews praised their performances, especially Hathaway's portrayal of, a woman navigating this relationship. That kind of challenges societal norms. What's interesting is that critics noted that even though the age gap is important, the film doesn't make it seem exploitative or anything like that. Instead, they focused on the connection between the characters.
That's good to hear. Sounds like they managed to handle a sensitive topic with, care and depth. But isn't there always a risk of romanticizing these kinds of relationships?
Yeah, that's a valid point. But it seems like the filmmakers were aware of that, and they chose to focus on the emotional side of things, rather than just sensationalizing the age difference. One review even said that the movie kind of reflects that real-life trend of older women dating younger male celebrities. Like Harry Styles.
Ah, okay, I see the connection now. Like tapping into that cultural curiosity without necessarily endorsing it.
Right. It's about exploring these relationships and how they challenge what society thinks. It makes you wonder, are we becoming more accepting of relationships that don't fit the traditional mold, or do we still judge them?
That's a really interesting question. It seems like attitudes are changing, but there's definitely still judgment around age gap relationships.
Yeah.
What do you think? Is the idea of you helping to create a more open conversation about these relationships?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it's at least starting a dialogue. By showing a realistic age gap relationship, the film encourages viewers to think about their own assumptions and biases.
I agree. It's important to remember that the film is based on a novel. So let's talk about Robin Lee's book for a bit.
The novel came out in 2017, and it gained a huge following. A lot of readers felt that it was a realistic portrayal of, a woman in her 40s trying to figure out love and desire while dealing with society's expectations.
So it sounds like the book was already part of a conversation that was happening, but was there any, like, backlash or controversy about its themes?
It's interesting because not really. Maybe the cultural landscape was more ready for these kinds of stories then. Or maybe it was the book's approach, Maybe that resonated with readers.
That's fascinating. It seems like the book's success helped pave the way for the movie. It's amazing how a book can start a conversation and then years later be made into a film, reaching a whole new audience.
And speaking of reaching a wider audience, let's talk about the movie's visuals. The IMDb synopsis mentions Coachella, New York City, and even a European tour. Did the sources talk about how these places add to the story's atmosphere?
Oh, I love when filmmakers use locations to, make the story better. It's like the setting becomes another character.
Totally. Several reviews talked about the movie's stunning cinematography, especially the scenes in Europe. They said the landscapes and the cityscapes really add to the romance, and they create a visually captivating backdrop for the character's journey.
I can already picture it. The beaches of the south of France, those charming Parisian cafes. It sounds incredibly romantic.
Yes, and it's not just about pretty pictures. The locations also reflect the character's emotions and how their relationship changes. Think about it. The free spirit of Coachella versus the more intimate settings of the European tour. Those differences could represent the shifts in their romance, the emotions, the power dynamics.
Wow, that's a really insightful observation. Sounds like the filmmakers put a lot of thought into choosing those locations, not just for how they look, but also for what they symbolize in the story.
Exactly. It's the details, and the way the visuals connect to the emotions. That's what makes this film more than just a typical rom-com.
It really makes you appreciate the craft of filmmaking. It's not just about telling a story. It's about creating a whole world that pulls you in, that makes you feel something.
Absolutely. And one thing that struck me about this world is how the story revolves around this woman in her 40s. And she's not just the main character, she's the one driving the story. It's her desires, her choices, her journey that are at the center of it all.
You're so right. And that feels so refreshing, especially in a genre that often focuses on younger women finding love. It's like the idea of You is saying, hey, women in their 40s have desires and experiences that are just as valid and interesting.
Exactly. It challenges the idea that a woman's worth or desirability goes down as she gets older. This woman, she has a career, a daughter, a past, and a future she's creating. Love is part of her life, but it doesn't define her.
I love that. It's about time we see more stories that celebrate women in their prime, showing them as complex, multifaceted people.
It shows how storytelling is changing. Hopefully, we'll see more nuanced and inclusive narratives like this in the future.
I couldn't agree more. Now, let's talk about another part of the idea of You that's been kind of hinted at, the music.
Yeah.
We've got a pop star at the center of it all, so music has to be important, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And don't forget, their first meeting is at Coachella, a massive music festival. It's like the setting is screaming, music is important here.
I'm a total music nerd, so I always pay attention to how music is used in movies. It can set the mood, tell you how a character feels, even hint at what's going to happen. Did the sources mention any specific music choices in the idea of You?
They confirmed the existence of original songs that are performed by the fictional boy band, August Moon, but they didn't say anything specific about the tracks or how they're used in the movie.
That's too bad. I was hoping for some juicy details about the soundtrack. It would be cool to see how they use music to reflect the different moods and emotions in the story.
I agree, especially since music is so important to, the male lead. Maybe it's intentional, though. Maybe they want us to discover and interpret the music on our own.
Ooh, like a musical treasure hunt. I like that. I'm already planning to check out the soundtrack.
Me too. Sometimes the best discoveries are the ones we make ourselves.
Well said. Speaking of exploration, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the cultural context surrounding the idea You. We've touched on it a little, but I'm curious to explore it further.
That's a great idea. Every story exists within a certain cultural landscape, and that shapes how it's understood.
Exactly. So, what did our sources say about the cultural climate when the film was released? How might it have influenced how people saw the story?
Well, one important thing is the conversation happening about age and relationships. In pop culture, we've seen a shift lately, with more stories exploring relationships that don't follow the traditional rules. including those with age gaps.
That's true. We see it everywhere, in movies, TV shows, even with celebrities in real life. It seems like society is becoming more open to relationships that challenge what's considered normal.
Exactly. And that shift probably had something to do with how well received the idea of you was. Audiences might be more open to looking at the complexities of these relationships, especially when they're shown with sensitivity.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems like audiences want more realistic portrayals of love. It's not about fitting into a mold anymore. It's about embracing the unique, individual nature of connection.
Precisely. The idea of you seems to tap into that desire for authenticity. It's not a fairy tale. It's about real people dealing with the messy, complicated, and beautiful realities of human connection.
I love that. It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience in a love story.
Absolutely. And that's why it's so exciting to see films like this pushing boundaries and expanding what's possible in storytelling.
Now, let's talk about another cultural force, fandom.
Hmm.
With its pop star and, being based on a popular book, the idea of you seems like it would attract a lot of fans. Did our sources talk about the role of fandom in the film's success?
That's interesting. While the sources mention the positive reviews and how popular it is on streaming, they didn't really talk about the impact of fandom.
That's surprising, considering what the film's about and its built-in audience from the book. I bet fans are a big reason why it's doing so well, spreading the word, creating buzz.
You're probably right. Fandom is a powerful thing in entertainment today. It's more than just enjoying a movie. It's about connecting with people who love the same things you do. The online communities, the fan art, the discussions, it's a whole world built around shared enthusiasm.
It's amazing how fans can create communities and experiences around the things they love. And that passion can really boost a film's success.
Absolutely. Fandom is something worth paying attention to, especially when you're looking at how a film impacts culture. It's clear that the idea of you has resonated with people, and I wouldn't be surprised if passionate fans are a big part of that.
I agree. It seems like we've uncovered another layer to this story, something that goes beyond the screen and into the world of fans, the ones who've embraced the idea of you and made it their own.
And that speaks to the power of great storytelling, its ability to connect people and create communities.
Before we move on, I want to talk about the people behind the scenes.
Hmm?
We've talked about the story and the cultural stuff, but what about the people who made it all happen?
You mean the filmmakers? They definitely deserve some credit.
Exactly. Did our sources tell us anything about the film